We want to drill deeper to see what, of course, they had to take, or was their take from the presidential speech yesterday in Parliament, and of course what has been happening on the political front as far as security is concerned. Allow me to introduce to you once again Dr. Simiyu Werunga, who is the Executive Director of the African Security Studies and Strategic, of course, Alignment. Also, we do have with us Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is a national security expert and conflict resolution expert as well. Also do have Professor Midamba, who is an expert on defense and foreign policy, and also the VC of KCA University. Also joining us is Biar Ajak, who is the Director of International Growth Center in South Sudan, who will join us much later. Right, let's begin with Dr. Werunga. Looking at yesterday's speech, what was your highlights, the hits and misses from the president? Of course, he couldn't set his agenda right now because, of course, we're eagerly waiting to see what will happen on October the 17th as far as the presidential election is concerned. Good morning.
Morning, Debarl. Yeah. I always like avoiding political issues. And to me, yesterday was a political event. So I might not be in a good position to comment on what the president said. I think that one I prefer leaving it to politicians.
To politicians?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have politicians here today. What will happen? We have to comment, of course. Looking at the security aspect of it, he never highlighted on it. You should have said, of course, I expected the president to have highlighted something on security, but given the circumstances, he couldn't. Anyway, I'm just ribbing you.
What I know is normally this kind of thing, the president sets his agenda.
Yes.
For the 5 years.
Yes.
And yesterday he didn't do that. So if he had to do what we normally expect the president to do,
yes,
then I'm sure you'll have mentioned something on security, how the government intends to move forward. But because he didn't do that, I think yesterday to me was a political event. And, I didn't expect much from him in terms of, even if he mentioned the issues of he doesn't, his government will not allow anybody to wreck the country and whatever. I think that was a political event.
A political event. All right, Dr. Mustafa.
Well, Debarl, I think the government is working hard to project, to ensure that there is no vacuum or apparent vacuum in leadership in the country. And that's why the president, I guess, had to address Parliament. It's not a good thing that the members of Parliament, some members of Parliament, elected members of Parliament, boycotted the first sitting,
yes,
or that particular sitting in Parliament. It doesn't send very good signals around the country. This is the time when our leaders should show that even though there are differences in terms of the way politics is done in this country, that there come certain times when they have to sit together and listen, then disagree if they have to disagree. I hope that this will not characterize the life of Parliament, that we will be seeing boycotts throughout the next 5 years.
All right, let's hear from Professor Midamba.
Debarl, what I want to say, number one, of course, I concur with my colleagues, but let me take it in a different angle. And that is, I've been talking to a lot of our students, and our students is a good representation of the people of Kenya. And here's what I summarize out of this discussion. Number one is that the people of Kenya are tired of mudslinging and negative politicking. Secondly, is that no one individual or group of people own Kenya. Kenya is a constitutional democracy, and it is the people of Kenya who will jointly decide who rule this land. And therefore, the candidates need to really focus on the substance of the issues that are facing the country and move away from negative politics, because negative politics is not good for our country right now.
All right, thank you very much. All right, let's hear from Dr. Oliver Kisaka, and also welcoming Peter Biar, Ajak from Britain. Good to see you. Welcome back home.
Very good to see you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much
for
having
a long while.
me. Absolutely,
Right?
absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. We shall be discussing much more of what is happening in South Sudan also much later in the course of the program. But let's hear about your comment on yesterday's presidential speech in Parliament.
Yeah, I think it was, as my colleagues have said, it was a speech given at a difficult time. But I concur with my colleagues that when there is a majority in Parliament that is overwhelming, it demands those that are called a minority. They are not they are not a very serious minority. They are significant. It demands that they demonstrate their prowess by the way they argue their points, by the way they cut connections, by the way they mobilize other people to see the things that they are saying. The opposition MPs are going to need MPs from the other side to pass bills that are important and critical to them. And so this would be the time to begin building bridges. The other thing we have been talking about, I think since 2 weeks ago, is just the question of how we Kenyans treat one another. Even if your colleague loses, there should be magnanimity. There should be a hand of fellowship. So if there is going to be a hand of fellowship, whoever wins or whoever loses, this is not the time to break it. This is the time to foster a relationship of we can work together when it becomes important. So I think that we need to see a different type of leadership beyond activism.
Right. Let's hear from Peter Biar, Ajak. You've been following the events in Kenya from London. First of all, just give us a brief of what is happening with your doctorate. Are you done yet, or are you going back to Britain?
Well, thank you very much, Debarl, for having me, and it's very good to see some of the old colleagues here, Professor Midamba and Dr. Good to see you. So the thesis is submitted. I submitted on June 27th, and I'm defending it on the 20th of October. So I'm in that trenches now, trying to revise what I wrote and thinking about it. Anyway, coming to the issue of Kenyan election, I think I completely concur with what my colleagues have been saying. But let me first start by saying that I must seriously congratulate the people of Kenya by the way in which you conducted yourself. Elections in Africa are very difficult. And generally, if you are not careful, they could lead to disaster, as you experienced in 2007.
Yes.
But I think the atmosphere this time, regardless of the toxic environment in which everything was occurring, people behaved themselves well. And I think to a certain degree also your political leaders have to be appreciated for demonstrating a great deal of leadership. But on the issue of opening the parliament and the boycott that is going on, the reality is this. Your constitution recognizes that there is only one president at a time. And as a result, it does not mean if, for example, elections are postponed, that the business is suspended entirely. The business continue. And I think you Kenyan are still implementing that Vision 2030 that Mwai Kibaki developed a long time ago. And I think the Jubilee Coalition continued more or less on that vision. And even if there was to be a change of government, I don't see how any particular political party can move away from such a consensus of how Kenya can be built. So I think there is really a need for all your political leaders to show that leadership and to think about the long-term good of your people. It's very important that all of them exercise restraints and avoid toxic statements that may bring your country to unfortunate situation like what we have in South Sudan.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, looking at what also the civil society is saying, that they're piling pressure on the removal of key staff from IEBC right now, and where we're headed, we know October 7th is slated to be the day for the presidential election, and we really start for time, right? Looking at that, and what does that really portend if we go overboard or we really insist on pushing the envelope on the removal of the staff, as NASA is doing right now? What sort of a crisis will we be facing?
I think, Debarl, I start from the point of perception. if half of the people who voted have no faith in the staff that ran the elections in August, and we want this country to be at peace with itself after the October 17th elections, then it is important that their demands are heard, their demands are listened to. And I think we saw the chairperson coming up with a team that to him, and nobody prompted him to do that. So even within the IEBC itself, there was a sense of, can we have some other people to run these elections so that we can create some sense of responsibility, some sense of ownership, and make Kenyans feel like they are part and parcel of this process. So for as long as there's this perception that there's a population in this country that feels the team that ran the last elections were compromised, and people keep on talking about the Supreme Court didn't do this, the Supreme Court didn't say this. To me, there's only one sentence that I look at: irregularities, inconsistencies, and therefore whatever the results were did not meet the benchmark as per the Supreme Court. And therefore, for as long as there's that group, whether it is 7 million, whether it is 10 million, that feel the staff in IEBC did not meet the expectations, if the same staff remains to do the next elections, then I think as a country, we are playing with ourselves. And perception is very important if you want to have a free, fair, credible, and verifiable elections. It boils down to perception. If we feel that the people who are going to do it are the same people who messed up the first one, then Debarl, the politicians can say what they want to say, but I think this country is greater than politicians, and we believe that we should have elections that every Kenyan will go home after 17th of October feeling that these elections were credible, and the winners will win with grace, and the losers will accept with humility.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Debarl, it's important that politicians keep off the IEBC. And when I say politicians, I mean politicians from both NASA, Jubilee, and any other political party that are contesting in these elections. We've seen a lot of noise directed at the IEBC, some rightfully so, because of they bungled the presidential elections, which were nullified by the Supreme Court. I'm suspecting that there are quite a number of challenges with the senatorial MPs, MCS that would be in trouble, those who have been elected. Now, the thing here is that if the political leaders put so much pressure on the IEBC, then they're not going to deliver. Now, those who have committed electoral offenses within IEBC must face the law. Keriako Tobiko and his team should have moved and checked what are the problems, and then institute criminal proceedings. Then based on that, Chebukati should act on those who actually have committed electoral offenses. The challenge in this country is that, and we are constantly seeing that political leaders are shouting at IEBC from right, left, and center. Now, when a country is in such a dire situation as we are in today, we don't want to go the way of South Sudan. And I'm happy to see our brother Peter Biar back here. And good luck in your Viva Voce when you go and defend your PhD. We should be improving on our arguments. Political leaders should constantly be improving on their arguments, not shouting at each other. And unfortunately, this is what they're doing. I cannot even get a sense. I stopped even following what political leaders are actually saying or shouting at each other about.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. So we want to also see this particular story that has been doing rounds especially regarding the tetanus. We just ran it for you, and where it has been politicized somehow. And what does that really portend? Because we saw from the report, and we had an editorial saying that, yes, even if they did the testing, some of the vials were identified to have this particular hormones. So we cannot wholesalely try and shunt or try and say that this particular exercise was pure without any vestiges of hormones not being seen. Let's just play that clip so that we can, for the benefit of our panelists and our viewers as well who missed it.
Hundreds of thousands of our girls and women aged between 14 and 49 from the fastest growing populations in the country will not have children because of the state-sponsored sterilization that was sold to the country as tetanus vaccination.
The statement by the Honorable Raila Odinga can at the least be described as reckless and in total lack of any form of scientific merit. Honorable Raila seems to have completely run out of ideas, and he is now cleaning on anything for the purposes of getting media highlights.
And of course, reports are really coming to hand also informed us that at least 3 vials of the vaccine were identified to have those particular hormones. So one is, it can be one too many as well. We cannot now say that they were purely, even if we have that particular record coming from the ministry, one is one too many. Don't you think, Dr. Oliver Kisaka?
Yeah, Debarl, this story of vaccines has been a very sensitive one. First, obviously raised by the Catholic Church. When it comes to matters like this that can stand scientific scrutiny, we shouldn't be calling one another names on TV. That's right. We should be getting scientists into the labs. There is no developed country which will be told that 1% of your vaccines has got foreign elements, and then they just go ahead and tell the people, close your eyes, let's just give, whoever gets, whoever doesn't. That doesn't happen anywhere. You are aware that eggs have been withdrawn from the shelves in Europe, eggs from Britain, because of being suspected to have something in them that is not good. I think the Honorable Doctor who just spoke is a scientist. You don't argue science by debate. You go to the lab, and if the lab tells you that there's something wrong, then you define a cause of action. So I would advise that we don't put at risk the lives of our people. Mm-hmm. But just in case.
Right, the fact that we had a certain cluster of a population being chosen to administer this particular vaccine really raises eyebrows as well, right? 15 to around 49 years of age, and particularly of course, disease, so to speak. It's, I mean, all Kenyans we expect to be vaccinated as well, isn't it?
No,
I know all of you are really gun-shy to comment on this, but don't you think also this is, yeah, it's the security of the people. If you don't have it, yeah?
Debarl, let me give you an example of some similar situation that we were in and involved in. Boko Haram, way back, when I think it was the polio vaccination that was being given to Nigerians. Boko Haram came up with some kind of conspiracy theory that all these vaccines are laced with, some hormones to curtail or to make sure that the Muslim women in northern Nigeria are going to give birth. I think Al-Qaeda or Taliban did the same in Afghanistan. Health issues, unfortunately, at certain times then become political or even security, as you're saying. You'll see that some of these terrorist groups have actually used that, and it works. We actually had to mobilize religious leaders. I'm sure Dr. Oliver Kisaka, you'll remember sometime, and even the religious leaders in Nigeria actually were involved in this, that we had to work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to mobilize religious leaders from across now, not just Nigeria, but the Sahel region, to actually go and convince Muslim women and girls that the vaccines were okay. They were not, they were for polio, to eradicate polio, which came back into Nigeria. And we had several meetings in Nigeria, in Senegal. It was so difficult. Once there is doubt put onto a vaccine, it becomes so difficult. And as Dr. Kisaka said, it's in the lab that we actually need to get results. And we need to see tests being done and actually let those experts and researchers and doctors tell us what's going on. I saw that the sample for this particular vaccine was given to the Lancet. They did their tests and they verified that there's actually nothing to do with this hormone that is going to affect the birth rates or the fertility of the girls. We are politicizing the issues, I think. I would really not wish to see politicians be the ones who are speaking about this. And by the way, it's going to be very reckless. First of all, the government needs to get in and give us answers, and number two, is going to be reckless for any government to allow such kind of a vaccine to be given. In my view, and I think there's the doctor from the Lancet spoke. I'm not too sure that what's doing rounds is correct. They're just rumors.
All right. Okay, when we circle back, we'll hear from Professor Noah Midamba and, of course, look at a raft of other issues as well happening in the world, taking a panoramic view of the security situation in the world. Don't go away, much more coming up on the other side of the break. You're watching Standing on Guard here on Decision 2017.